Hello and welcome to this month's painting tutorial. This month we're going to paint monochromatically, which means one color, and we're going to do that in order to simplify the painting method and to get back to the difference between tone and value. And so to paint monochromatically, you could choose any color you wanted, but I'm going to simplify things even a little bit further and choose a dark color and not have to worry about translating a different color into this darkness. So I could paint this whole thing in reds or purples. I'm going to stay with Payne's Gray and keep it in shades of gray and black. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw the picture that I'm working from on my board. And in order to save time on the film, I've already done that. And I have also picked out a few of these highlighted blades of grass that you see, and I have protected those. However, I neglected to do the same to the shapes of highlights in her hair and face. So let me go ahead and do that. So, those have to dry, but in the meantime I can do some work in the background. Remember, you always paint back to front. So I'm going to paint the background and then work my way up. Now, painting monochromatically also reinforces another fact of nature that is going to really strengthen your painting if you can get it down, and that is that dimension and depth is a product not of color but of tone. So you have to match the lightness or darkness that you see at each stage in order to make it look like this is a forest retreating into the background. It doesn't matter what color those things are at all. So the tree is going to be about as dark as I can make it. And then if I just add more water and dilute the color, I can come up with my different tones. See how you have to translate the tone of this color into the tone of this color. Now I have that on my brush and I'm going to start to paint those shapes that I see. So here's this mottled shadowy shape in the distance. It goes clear across here, and I'm focusing on the shapes and painting them down in big pieces to keep them nice and smooth. And where I'm working on now, I'm also avoiding the highlight. So I'm painting this dark gray positive shape and avoiding this negative shape of white. Then, since these are so soft in the background and the colors blend into each other, I'm not going to wait until the color dries. I'm just going to start painting the darker color right on top of that lighter one. Good. Rinse it out. Test. That's good. I don't want to be surprised by the colors, and so I always need to test. Here's some ghostly trees in the background. And see, again, I'm painting everything in one big shape. And the spaces in between are very light, but I don't want them to be bright white or else my highlights won't stand out. So I'm going to paint over them. Okay, so that effect is coming through. Here you can see the lighter trees. Up here they're getting darker. As you come forward, the contrast increases, and so they get darker and darker and darker. This tree in the midground is very dark, but at the base it's going to get a little bit lost. And so I'll paint a mid-tone over the top here and let this get a little bit cloudy. Alright, so you can see the process here. Just painting the trees, moving forward in the picture plane. This I have to bump up to be darker now that that base tone is down. So let me paint the rest of the very background in this area, and I'll come back to you to show you how to do the foreground and of course the girl. Now you can squint from the reference photo to the picture and check those values to see how they're matching up. Obviously this tree needs to go a lot darker, but you can see what I did though. I first started the trees in the foreground, only these two, because they're the only two that are close enough to see the texture. But I put the texture on of the bark very darkly, and now I can wash over the top of it. Now that that's dry, with a value that's just a little bit lighter. And then you see that works really nicely. The only trick is you only want to go over once. Otherwise you're going to start washing that texture away. Now I'm going to go a little bit more carefully around the little girl's head. Once I have the outline done, I'll go right up and lay down that mid-tone. Very good. Now while it's still wet, I'm going to go back and add some even darker areas here and there. That will help the tree to look like it is round and has a side of shadow and one of highlight. Alright, then at the bottom, before the trees can dry too much, I'll go back and add a little bit of the grass texture. Might need to use a smaller brush for that. But this is the first time that I've used my small brush. Even in this grass here, that's the side of a flat. The problem with small round brushes is that you pick. You start to pick at your painting. Now I just do the same sort of thing to finish up here. And look how by using a dry brush technique, I can create that grass texture without even trying. And because the paint is doing it itself, it looks much more natural than when I try to fumble through and make individual grass blades. See? That's working because the brush is just a little bit dry, and so it makes this interesting scumbly texture. And notice how I had to go down first and then up, or up first and then down, because I wanted two uneven edges. Same thing here. And I'll move the painting up and do that same stroke into the girl here. You have to be a little bit careful because if you overdo it, you'll cover up too much of her. And then before it has a chance to dry, I do the same stroke going down. Okay? So let me fill in this front part here, and then I'll come back one last time and we'll do the girl. Okay, here's the painting with the background complete. So now let's move to painting the girl. Alright, I have a mid-tone mixed up, and to make this as easy as possible, I'm just going to paint everything that has that mid-tone, and then when that dries I'll go back and I'll add the shadow shapes. And since it's monochromatic, I am including the shape on the arm as part of the shadow shapes. Notice that it's not distinguishable from the dress at this point. And there are some shapes on the face. Faces are really nice to do in monochromatic painting because you don't think of the face as having these distinct shapes. But when you're painting this way, you really have to see them, the way that they all combine together. Before that dries, I might want to go in with a small brush and continue that shape as I see it in the lips and the nose, in those really small areas. Now look how much detail you can see even with just one color, one pass, making one big shadow shape. Okay, then I'm going to let that dry. Down here in the legs is already pretty dry, so I can add this darker color of her pants. Now I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll come back and add some shadow shapes. Now the base tone is completely dry, so I'm going to add some shadow shapes. I'll start here in the hair with my large round. And I'm working on putting that shape down smoothly as one continuous shape. You might squint so that you can see that shape better. But see how I first develop the outlines and then I fill in when I'm sure of the shape. Then while that really dark color is on the brush, I'm going to accent in the folds. Before that color has a chance to dry completely, I'm going to go back and soften up the edge just using a damp brush, especially here at the face. This is really risky. You have to be really certain of your shadow shapes before you start accenting them with the darkest paint. So you can see the process, how I go along, and I'm darkening and then softening and using a few different tones to really accent what I have here. And that's the process that I'm going to follow on the rest of the body. It should only take about 20 minutes. And then I'll come back to you and show you what the finished piece looks like. After finishing the contrasts on the darks and removing the masking fluid from the remaining grass, this is what I've wound up with. So again, do your squint test from the reference material to your finished piece to double check your contrasts. And you can see that the shapes here are pretty accurate. The important thing is that you wind up with a painting that's interesting to look at, whether somebody is comparing it to the reference material or not. But that is monochromatic painting. I recommend that you do it at least a few times before you start adding colors. And when you start adding colors, make it simple for yourself and start with one. Then make a painting with 2 colors, and then make a painting with 3 colors. If you can make a good painting with 3 colors, then you should be able to start adding to your palette without too much frustration, because that means that you're able to differentiate between color and tone, and so rather than fighting, the colors can work together. And once you get to the point where your contrasts and your colors are no longer fighting each other, then you'll start making finished work that have a good realistic quality because they convey depth. So that concludes this month's painting tutorial. I hope you've learned a lot and wish you the best of luck to you in your own studio. Thanks so much for watching.